Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Last year, Nelson Chamisa conned millions of Zimbabweans into believing that CCC would win big the 2023 elections because he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. And of course, now we know he was lying. What is really disappointing for me is that some people have not accepted that reality. And so the question has got to be asked. If we were to have the 2028 elections tomorrow, would Chamisa still be able to con the millions of ordinary Zimbabweans to participate in that election so that we end up with the situation we are in right now, where millions of people participated in the elections, gave Zanu PF legitimacy, to the point where SADC itself was helpless? That question has got to be asked, and I think it is the most pressing political question of our generation. Welcome, Benjamin.
Hi, good day to you, and good day to all viewers. The question that you have posed, it's got to get you thinking as an individual. Last year and the years previous to that, I think we have been on this channel, talking about the same very thing leading to the 2023 elections. And we were telling people, ladies and gentlemen, Zanu PF will rig these elections. Look, there is no basic thing such as a verified voters roll. The evidence, I think for those that wanted to see the evidence or the writing on the wall, they could see it from miles away. Zanu PF was rigging. Zanu PF was intimidating people. Zanu PF were bribing people left, right, and center. But you find out that when we spoke to say this, we became very, very unpopular. We were as if we were prophets of doom. But it does not need for you to prophesy to see, when the evidence is there. We've been through this road so many times for 24 years since the conception of MDC and became CCC, will become something else. And how we continue to keep on, with the trend so energetically is mind-blowing. Why are we continuously suffering ourselves, doing the same thing over and over again, and hoping for a miracle, a bolt from the blue? I think this is very, very worrisome. And to answer your question, I believe so. I believe Zimbabweans are so willing to listen to whoever tells them what they want to hear. And in the end, they are preyed upon. And it's quite unfortunate.
Well, his latest contribution to this debate, as we can see on the screen there, it's a done deal for Zimbabwe. What is coming? He is sending that message to his supporters, once again telling them that he will win the elections. It's just a matter of time. What is shocking here is that this same language that he spoke before the 2023 elections, and people believed him. Here is a short clip of him talking about those elections in 2023.
Makorokoto Zimbabwe, nokuti hakuna munhu anomira kana denga raronga plan. Denga raronga plan, denga harifo iri. Plan ya Mwari haifo iri. Ini ndatanga kugadzira cabinet. There is no way we are not going to form a new cabinet. There is no way we are not going to have a celebration. There is no way we are not going to have an inauguration. Let's start preparing for our inauguration. Let's start preparing for our celebration.
People believed him. And the same people still believe him today. This is his opening line. It's a done deal. What is a done deal? We are going back to where we were before the 2023 elections, where he's adamant that there's going to be change. And yet, when you look at the evidence on the ground, there is no evidence for any change. I think what I find also equally annoying here is that Chamisa blatantly lied. And yet, many people out there at the time refused to accept he lied. And even now, with the benefit of hindsight, still refuse to accept that he lied. That is really worrying to me. I'll just play another short clip there before you comment, Ben, where BBC actually cornered him in a program, Hard Talk, on the issue of lying.
Ende patakasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Serious questions were raised about your behaviour in Washington, D.C. You did see some senior people on Capitol Hill, some Congress people, but you also claimed that you'd seen Donald Trump. You claimed you had a conversation with him in which you said he asked you how much you needed to move the country forward. You told him $15 billion, and he said to you that he would provide the money if you won the election. That was not true, was it?
Sangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
It was not true that you'd seen Donald Trump and that Donald Trump indicated to you that he would provide, if you won the election,
But
$15 billion.
All those statements were said by other people, not what I said.
Akasangana na Trump akatibvunza naye vakomana mari yamuri kuda kuti nyika ifambe imari.
Well, no, because there is a video which shows you at a rally in January back home in Zimbabwe saying that Donald Trump had pretty much promised you $15 billion. To be clear, because some people in Zimbabwe are still confused, you're now telling me you did not meet Donald Trump.
We did not.
There we have it. He insists that he did not say it. And yet he did say it. There is a video saying that him making that claim. That is one of the things I find ridiculous. And yet there are people out there who still do not want to accept that Chamisa lied. I find this really infuriating in many ways.
You know, I said this in the beginning of the show. I said, you know, when we spoke to say, you know, these elections are being rigged, come what may, they will be rigged, because this is what Zanu PF does. You know, we became very unpopular. But if you want to be popular, all you got to do is tell what the people want to hear. You know, things like what Chamisa was saying there was what people wanted to hear, but not what they needed to hear. That is the great difference. He was deceptive That is very true. But that is what the people wanted to hear. And that is why in the background you could hear people clapping hands and shouting. It's just the same with, how Zanu PF operates. The Vision 2030, where they tell you that, we are moving forward, we are going to be an upper middle, income economy. Because people are starving, people are right at the bottom. That is what they want to hear. But is there any evidence to support that? None at all. The same thing with Chamisa. Did he meet Donald Trump? He did not. You see, the problem is, I think, at the end of the day, it all comes down to us individuals, individually. Are we willing to continue being used to believe such nonsense? Just because that is what we want to hear. Yet what we need to hear, we do not want. We know, I always want to quote Dr. Mumba's statement. He says, this is the time for us to fight for reforms. Every single observer mission that came to our elections, not this one, all of them have said one simple thing in common: Zimbabwe needs to have reforms. It is everybody else that can see except Zimbabweans that will participate without those reforms in place and think they will get away with it. And when we lose, then we start saying SADC did not help. No, SADC helped us because they've told us on numerous occasions, reforms, gentlemen, before you enter this. That is what we need to hear, not what we want. So unless we get our priorities and our mission in place, I think and I firmly believe, to answer your question, 2028 and beyond, we will keep on participating in rigged elections.
Here is somebody who was responding to the earlier tweet from Chamisa talking of Zimbabwe being on the threshold of change, with the usual hashtag God is in it. And their response was, some of his tweets are low-key childish. It's absolutely right. And Hopewell Chinono was following on that, this speaks more about Chamisa's space, how childish they are. But that is also equally true. But what we cannot run away from is that, childish as the best may be, what matters is that they believe him. That the same base can be galvanized to participate in a flawed election, even when they've been warned that doing so will only give legitimacy to Zanu PF. They've participated in the past. Last year, nearly 2 million people voted for Chamisa. And I think one can estimate 3 to 4 million, mostly in the diaspora, who cheered and applauded those elections because they believed Chamisa. They believed what he was claiming there, that God is in it. and God's plan is He is already preparing a cabinet, etc., etc. As long as we have got millions of these people who are so gullible, so naive, so ignorant, they believe anything they are told, we are in serious trouble. The consequences of this naivety is people participated in their numbers, millions, in last year's election. That, I believe, is one of the reasons, not the only reason, one of the reasons why SADC did not act on the SADC Election Observer Team report, which condemned those elections as a farce. How could they, if millions of ordinary Zimbabweans participate in these flawed elections, believing they will win them, just because they did not, the opposition did not win, should not be used then as, oh, we are going to condemn the elections. No. Elections should not be judged on the results, should be judged on the process. And if we are happy to participate in a flawed process, it is not for SADC to step in and say, no, you must have a proper process. To remind some of our Zimbabweans out there, we did have the opportunity to implement those reforms to make sure elections are free, fair, and credible. And we wasted it. I honestly think that if we do not do something between now and 2028, and Chamisa, as we can already see, is gearing up to relaunch his blue movement. There will be millions of ordinary Zimbabweans out there who will believe anything that he tells them. Democracy, a healthy and functioning democracy, depends on an educated electorate. We are far from that. It is incumbent on us, the Zimbabweans, to make sure that the millions of ordinary Zimbabweans out there are educated and they stop believing blatant lies, cheap politics. Chamisa and company were hell-bent on participating in these flawed elections. That is a fundamental truth that we cannot run away from. And for people to be conned, so easily conned, and not for the first time, again and again, into participating in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy, only to perpetuate their own suffering, is, to say the least, infuriating. But that is the reality. And I think that is the number one challenge we have got to deal with between now and 2028. We can see it coming, we can stop it. And if we fail, we only have ourselves to blame for. Thank you very much, Ben. Do you want to give your closing remarks?
Thank you. So in closing, I usually do not really follow what Hopewell says, and I really didn't care about it. But hear what he says. I think we have found common ground. I think this is nonsense and it should be stopped. The nonsense of Chamisa coming always and saying absolutely nothing, and people broadcasting it as if it's something out of this world. How desperate have we become? I remember a couple of weeks back, he just said, Happy Monday. And everybody on social media just went berserk. I mean, really, there's nothing he said. Why are we so happy? What, it's just absurd, really. Why we have gone so low as to wish him back. I think it's a situation where we wish him back more than the value that he adds. We do not see anything beyond Chamisa. We do not see anything beyond the Zanu PF. And let me explain why we cannot see beyond is because of us who have we have limited ourselves. We have limited the prospect of having, a good, democratic, well-run country. We cannot see it. Because surely if we can see it, it does not involve those two, Chamisa and Mnangagwa. It completely does not involve them. Why am I saying? You can see with what they teach, what they tell you, what they preach is absolutely nonsense. They are just conning you and misleading you and preying on your desperation. And unless we understand this, and unless we follow what SADC and all the other observer missions have been saying, we are just going to keep on suffering as a nation together, crying and going from election to election, pillar to post, until doomsday maybe. So it all comes down to us. I've always said this. It all comes down to us individually, collectively, right? We have to put our act together as Zimbabwe. We want to go to this here place. We want to get to this here place. How do we achieve that? What are the preconditions to a healthy, functioning democracy? And unless we find those answers amongst ourselves, we will be, taken advantage by these clowns. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
I was just going to close with emphasizing the point that Zanu PF is exploiting the people just as much ignorance and naivety, just as much as CCC is doing the same thing. In the case of Zanu PF, there are strongholds in the rural area. One can forgive those people because they are subjected to massive intimidation. The people who have a choice here are the urban and the intellectuals. They are in a better position to make a meaningful choice, and they are the ones who are following blindly the likes of Chamisa. I'll just play a short clip of Margaret Dongo explaining why Zanu PF considers the rural areas as strongholds.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for Zanu PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Kuti the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. Zanu PF will never have control over them.
That is very true. But at least the rural Zanu PF supporters are intimidated, as we rightly heard there. I can't say the same thing for the urban. They continue to blindly support CCC and Chamisa. And just as a closing remark there, the comment on the screen there, I think most of you have had the chance to read it. To say Chamisa conned people is too much. Well, I don't know what you would consider to be too much. If he told the people that he was going to win big and they should continue participating in a flawed election, that is obviously conning people, because he knew he wasn't going to win. He knew the process was so flawed that he could not possibly win. And to say that you're making Chamisa a sacrificial lamb, I think that is completely out of taste. The Chamisa and company participated in these flawed elections out of greed. And the real people who are paying the price for it are the ordinary Zimbabweans. They gained nothing from participating in these flawed elections. Absolutely nothing. They're the ones who are suffering, who are paying the price for having the dictatorship continuing. Let's not fool ourselves into believing that somehow Chamisa and company are participating in these flawed elections out of the love of the ordinary people. That is ridiculous. If Chamisa did not know what he was doing, but then when he realized that he had failed to plug the vote-rigging loopholes, he should apologize to the people. He should apologize for conning them into participating in an electoral process that only ended up giving Zanu PF legitimacy. He hasn't done so. There is a lot of truth in the saying that MDC CCC have been Zanu PF part Team B in all but name. That cannot be denied. They failed to implement even one democratic reform during the GNU. What's the explanation for it? Greed. They've been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating gives Zanu PF legitimacy. I think we should stop finding all manner of feeble excuses to justify why the opposition should continue participating in these flawed elections. And I think that is part and parcel indeed of the education that we need for our people. We have got this binary mentality that it's either Zanu PF or CCC. The elections are not a binary, a simple mathematical binary, A or B. Politics is not that simple. Life is not that simple. In this particular case, the number one priority of the opposition is to implement the reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. If that opposition has failed to carry out that task, our priority should be to get an opposition that will implement the reforms. That is our priority. That should be our focus. The people should be educated on that. They should accept that Chamisa lied. Chamisa and company failed to implement reforms. Let's look for others who will implement the reforms. To just think, it has got to be Chamisa or Zanu PF is to miss the point completely. As much as one would want things to be simple, I think to reduce our electoral political system to binary, simple binary, is one of the weaknesses of our problem, of our generation. Because life is not always a simple binary. Thank you very much, Ben, and to everybody, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and hope you'll do it again in the future. So it'll be 7 o'clock UK time tomorrow, or 8 o'clock Zimbabwe time. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Good night.